The observation deck was a silent, dark room hanging in the void of space. The only light came from the giant screen that showed a world of fire and noise. Commander Daehyun of Earth watched, his face hard like stone. Next to him, Soo-min, the team's language expert, typed quickly on a small pad, recording everything. Her young eyes were wide, taking in the scene. On the screen, creatures that looked like lizards walked on two legs. They were the Cathar. Their scales were a dull green and they shouted with rough voices. They were in a large, empty room, the testing chamber. But the chamber was not empty now. It looked like a ruined city with broken buildings and smoke in the air. Suddenly, large robots shaped like walking tanks appeared. They were the combat drones. Their metal bodies shined under the fake sun. They moved towards the Cathar, their weapons starting to glow. The Cathar did not run. They screamed their war cries and attacked. Beams of bright green energy shot from their rifles. The sound was loud, even on the quiet observation deck. One Cathar warrior was hit by a drone's blast. It fell back, but another took its place, firing without stop. Daehyun watched the numbers and symbols flash on the screen next to the main picture. They showed the power of the weapons, the speed of the attacks, the level of aggression. "They are strong," he said, his voice low. "But it is a simple kind of strength. They only know how to break things." Soo-min nodded, not looking up from her pad. "Their language is the same. All their words for victory also mean destroy. They have no word for talk or agree." A door slid open on the observation deck and a new person entered. He was tall and thin, with skin the color of a pale blue sky. He was a Velian. His name was Kalen, and he was the one judging the test. He wore a simple gray suit and his face showed no feeling. "Commander Daehyun," Kalen said, his voice smooth and calm. "You're observing the conclusion of the Cathar proving." "We are," Daehyun said. "It is impressive. It is necessary," Kalen corrected him gently. "The galaxy is a dangerous place. The galactic community must know what every new species can contribute, or what threat they might become. This test, this battle trial, gives us that answer. It is simple, clear, and fair." On the screen, the last drone fell. The Cathar warriors stood over the broken robots, roaring their victory. New words appeared on the screen in large, clear letters. Cathar. Classification, Gamma-class assault species. "You see?" Kalen said, pointing. "The system is never wrong. Their place is now set. They will serve as shock troops, protecting our borders. A worthy role for a worthy people." Daehyun felt a tightness in his chest. Humanity had only just learned they were not alone. They had built their first starships, met their first aliens, and now they were here. Their future, the future of every person on Earth, would be decided in the next hour. It all came down to this one test. Kalen turned to face the human team fully. "Your time has come, humans. You must now send your finest warrior into the chamber. The system will create a battle suited to your physiology. Your performance will be measured and your classification will be assigned." He looked at Daehyun, at his strong build and soldier's posture. "I assume you, Commander, will be the one to represent your species?" Daehyun took a deep breath. He was a soldier. He had fought in wars on Earth. He knew how to use every weapon, how to run a battlefield. He was ready to go. He felt the weight of his entire world on his shoulders. "I will," he began. A calm voice cut him off. No, everyone turned. GA had been standing in the shadows, quiet until now. She was their diplomat, their expert in talking to people. She was not a soldier. She was of average height. With a calm face and thoughtful eyes, she stepped forward, her movement smooth and quiet. "GA?" Daehyun said, confused. Kalen looked at her, his head tilted. "I do not understand. This is the battle trial. It requires a warrior." "That is what I question," GA said, her voice still calm. She looked at Kalen, not with anger, but with a steady gaze. "You assume that our finest must be the one who is best at causing damage. What if our greatest strength is something else?" Kalen almost smiled. It was a cold, polite look. "Madam GA, strength is what keeps you safe in the galaxy. Strength is what earns you respect. A mind is a useful tool, but it is a shield that breaks against a real sword." "You are wrong," GA said, and her words were so simple and direct that they silenced the room. "The strongest shield is the one that prevents the sword from ever being swung. I have spent my life ending conflicts, not winning them. I have stood between armies and used words to make them stand down." "Is that not a power?" "It is not a power the system can measure," Kalen replied, his patience thinning. "The trial is a combat simulation. It requires combat." "Then let me provide a different kind of combat," GA said. She looked at Daehyun. Commander, you are a great warrior. But if you go in there with a gun, you are just telling them what they already know. You are telling them we are like the Cathar, only weaker. We will be given a low number, a poor classification. We will be at the bottom. She turned back to Kalen. But if I go in, you will have to measure something new. You will have to see a strength you do not have a category for. You would die in the first minute, Daehyun said, his voice tight with worry. The drones, the simulations, they will kill you. Will they? Ga asked. Or will they be confused by a target that does not act like a target? A system built for a hammer will see every problem as a nail. I am not a nail. I am water. And water finds a path around the hammer. Kalen watched her, his blue face unreadable. This was against all the rules. It was illogical. But his purpose was to assess a species' capabilities. If this human wanted to demonstrate a capability for suicide, the system would record that too. It is highly irregular, Kalen said finally. But the rules state your species chooses its representative. If you choose this in path, it is your right. He looked at Ga. You understand you cannot bring any weapons? The trial must measure you, not your technology. Ga nodded. I understand. I will enter unarmed. The words hung in the air. Unarmed. Daehyun felt a cold fear. He saw the image of Ga, who had never held a gun, standing in that chamber of death. He saw her being torn apart by the very drones they had just watched. Ga, this is a huge risk, he said, stepping closer. The future of Earth is exactly why I must do this, she interrupted softly. We cannot win their game by their rules. We must change the game. Let me show them that the most dangerous thing in the universe is not a weapon. It is an idea they cannot understand. She looked at Sumin. Sumin, can you give me a biomonitor? I want them to see that I am not afraid. I want them to see my heart does not race with rage, but with focus. Sumin, her hands shaking a little, attached a small device to Ga's wrist. It was a simple band, but it would send all of Ga's vital signs to the observation deck screens. Ga then took off her jacket. She was wearing a simple gray jumpsuit, the standard clothing for humans on the station. It offered no protection. She had nothing in her hands. She was truly going in with nothing. She walked towards the heavy door that led to the testing chamber. The door was made of thick metal, designed to contain explosions and energy blasts. Kalen moved to a control panel. I am initiating the standard combat sequence. The system will begin with a level 1 threat. It will escalate until the subject is defeated or the simulation is complete. He pressed a button. A deep hum filled the deck. The giant screen changed. It now showed the empty, sterile testing chamber from inside. It was a huge white room with no features at all. The door to the chamber began to open for Ga. A bright white light poured from the opening. Daehyun wanted to stop her. He wanted to pull her back and take her place. But he saw the look in her eyes. It was not the look of a soldier going to die. It was the look of a player about to make a move no one else expected. Ga did not look back. She stepped through the door into the blinding light. The heavy door slammed shut behind her with a sound like a final terrible judgment. The battle test had begun. The door sealed with a deep echoing boom that felt final. Inside the testing chamber, the world was pure, silent white. The floor, the walls, the high ceiling, all were a smooth, featureless surface that seemed to glow from within. The air was still and cool. Ga stood alone at the center of this vast, empty space. She took a slow, deep breath, feeling the quiet. Her hands hung loosely at her sides, her fingers relaxed. She was just a single, small figure in a sea of nothing. On the observation deck, the silence was heavy and tense. The main screen showed a perfect view of Ga in the chamber. Next to it, new data began to stream. A small pulsing light represented Ga's biomonitor. It showed her heart rate and breathing. The numbers were slightly elevated but steady. She was alert but not panicked. Kalen watched with a detached curiosity. His long, thin fingers rested on the control panel. The system is initializing, he stated. It will select an environment and opponent profile based on the subject's physiological data. Standard level 1 engagement. Daehyun stood rigid, his fists clenched at his sides. He saw Ga on the screen, so small and vulnerable. He knew what was coming. He had seen the drones tear into the Cathar. His mind filled with images of plasma fire and metal claws. She doesn't even have a knife, he muttered, more to himself than anyone. Sumin was focused on her own screen, which displayed the raw data feed. Her vitals are stable, Commander. Her cortisol levels are actually dropping. It's like she's meditating. Kaylin gave a soft, dismissive sound. Calmness is of little use against a particle beam. Inside the chamber, the white walls flickered. For a moment, the room seemed to glitch like a broken screen. Then the whiteness dissolved, replaced by a new reality. The sterile room was gone. Now GA stood in the middle of a dense alien jungle. Giant purple leaves, wider than she was tall, brushed against her. The air became thick and humid, filled with the sounds of strange, clicking insects and the drip of water. The light was a dim greenish haze filtering down from a canopy high above. The verdant abyss scenario, Kaylin noted, a classic. It tests situational awareness in combat in confined, complex terrain. From behind a thick, twisted tree trunk, a shape moved. It was a combat drone. It was not as large as the ones the Cathar had faced, but it was sleek and deadly. Its body was a dark, matte metal, and it moved on 6 multi-jointed legs, allowing it to navigate the uneven jungle floor with silent, insect-like grace. A single red optical sensor glowed on its front, and it held a sharp, energy-clawed arm. A second drone emerged from the other side, cutting off a potential path. Their red eyes locked onto GA. Daehyun leaned forward, his body tense. Here they come. The first drone charged. Its legs moved in a blur, carrying it through the undergrowth with shocking speed. The energy claw on its arm hummed to life, glowing with a dangerous blue light. It was designed to slice through armor. GIE did not run. She did not scream. She stood her ground, her eyes fixed on the drone. She watched the pattern of its movement, the way its legs shifted its weight. As the drone lunged, its claw swinging in a wide arc to cut her down, she did something simple. She took one smooth step to the side. It was not a frantic dive. It was a precise, almost casual movement. The drone's claw whistled through the empty air where her neck had been a second before. The machine's own momentum carried it past her. It skidded to a halt, its red eye swiveling to find her again. On the observation deck, Suman gasped softly. She didn't even flinch. The second drone attacked from her left. It leaped from a low-hanging branch, its claw pointed down at her. GA didn't look up. She simply dropped into a low crouch. The drone sailed directly over her head, crashing into the foliage behind her with a rustle of leaves. The system's data stream on the screen flickered. New terms appeared. Predictive evasion algorithm, active calculating. The numbers that usually measured weapon power and shield strength remained at 0. Kaylin's brow furrowed slightly. A fortunate dodge. The system will adapt. The drones regrouped. They moved to attack together, coordinating their assault. One came low, aiming for her legs, while the other came high, its claw ready to strike at her head. It was a pincer movement, a standard combat tactic meant to leave no escape. GA watched them come. She saw the high drone commit to its leap. She saw the low drone building speed for its charge. Instead of trying to get away from both, she moved towards the one coming low. At the last possible moment, she planted her foot and pushed off, not away but to the side, right into the path of the leaping drone. It was a move that made no sense. It was like stepping in front of a speeding car. Daehyun sucked in a sharp breath. What is she doing? But she wasn't stepping into the claw. The low drone, unable to correct its course, slammed into the space she had just left. At the same time, the leaping drone was now descending directly towards its partner. GA, now slightly to the side, was completely out of the main line of attack. The two drones collided in a tangle of metal limbs and screeching parts. The high drone landed awkwardly on top of the low one. Their claws scraped against each other's armor. For a moment, they were a confused heap on the jungle floor. GI took 2 calm steps back, creating distance. She was breathing a little faster now, but her biomonitor showed a steady, controlled rhythm. Her heart was pounding, but from exertion, not terror. The data stream on the observation deck screen was going wild. Environmental interaction high. Threat reevaluation in progress. Target aggression level 0. Conflict paradox detected. 0 aggression? Suman read aloud, her voice filled with wonder. The system doesn't know what to call what she's doing. It's not fighting. It's something else. Kaylin was silent. He stared at the screen, his usual calm demeanor gone. He had overseen hundreds of these trials. He had seen creatures of pure rage and cold, calculated killers. He had never seen anyone use the drone's own attacks to disable each other. This was not in the programming. In the jungle, the drones untangled themselves. Their red eyes glowed brighter, a sign of escalating threat response. They moved more cautiously now, circling her. They were learning, or trying to. One drone fired a low-powered energy pulse from a small emitter on its body. It was a warning shot designed to herd a target. GA didn't herd. She saw the pulse coming. It was slow enough to track. She shifted her weight, and the blast hit a giant leaf behind her which sizzled and turned black. The second drone used the distraction to charge again. This time it didn't use its claw. It simply tried to ram her at full speed, to knock her down and crush her against a tree. GA saw its trajectory. She was standing near a large, thick vine that hung between two trees. As the drone rushed her, she grabbed the vine not to swing but to use it as a pivot. She pulled herself slightly to the side and up, tucking her knees to her chest. The drone shot through the space beneath her, smashing headfirst into the tree trunk with a loud, metallic crunch. It staggered back, its front sensor cracked, its movements becoming jerky. She landed softly on her feet, still holding the vine for a moment before letting go. In the observation deck, Daehyun slowly unclenched his fists. He was starting to see it now. It wasn't magic. It was physics. It was timing. It was seeing the fight not as a series of attacks to block, but as a flow of energy to redirect. She's not fighting them, he whispered, echoing Sumin's earlier thought. She's dancing with them. Kalen finally spoke, his voice quiet and strained. The system is not designed for a dance. He looked at the data. The threat level indicator for the human subject was fluctuating wildly. It would drop to 0 when she stood still, then spike when she moved, not because she was attacking, but because her movements were so perfectly efficient they registered as a high-level tactical response. The jungle scene flickered again. The drones, one damaged and both confused, froze in place. Then the entire environment, the trees, the leaves, the sounds, dissolved back into the pure white room. The two drones powered down, their red eyes fading to black. Scenario 1, complete. Subject status, unharmed, proceeding to Scenario 2. GA was alone in the white room again. A fine sheen of sweat was on her forehead, but she stood straight. She closed her eyes for a second, centering herself, regulating her breath. She had passed the first test, not by breaking the drones, but by letting them break themselves against her calmness. On the observation deck, no one spoke. The only sound was the hum of the machinery. The Cathar had won their trial with loud fury and destruction. GA had won the first round with silence and a single, well-timed step. Kalen stared at the unarmed woman on the screen. For the first time, he felt a flicker of something he had never felt during a battle trial before. It wasn't respect. It was unease. The white silence of the chamber did not last. The walls flickered once more and the sterile room melted away. The humid jungle air vanished, replaced by a dry, metallic chill. The soft ground under GA's feet became a hard, grated floor. The space around her transformed into a narrow, dimly lit corridor. The walls were lined with pipes and conduits that hummed with low energy. The ceiling was low, creating a feeling of being trapped. This was a new kind of test. On the observation deck, Sumin read the new data. Scenario 2, Internal Defense Matrix. Close quarters combat. No natural cover. Daehyun felt his stomach tighten. The open jungle had given GA room to move. This corridor was a cage. There's nowhere for her to run, he said, his voice tight. Kalen watched, his expression unreadable. The system has adapted. It has identified her evasion as the primary threat. This environment is designed to limit that. From both ends of the corridor, a new threat emerged. Not 2, but 4 drones appeared. These were different from the jungle models. They were smaller, faster, and built for tight spaces. They had no legs. Instead, they hovered a few inches above the floor, their bodies a sleek, disc-like shape. A single bright blue eye glowed in their center, and short, powerful weapon barrels extended from their sides. They moved without a sound, gliding forward like ghosts. Ji stood in the middle of the corridor. She looked to her left. 2 drones advanced. She looked to her right. 2 more blocked her escape. She was surrounded. Her calm expression did not change, but her eyes scanned the environment quickly, taking in every detail. The pipes on the walls, the spacing of the overhead lights. The small access panels, the drones did not charge. They stopped a short distance away. Their blue eyes pulsed. Then all 4 fired at once. They did not fire at her. They fired at the floor around her. Bright bolts of energy struck the grated metal. creating a ring of sizzling hot spots. It was a warning, a demand for surrender. The heat from the spots warmed GA's legs. She did not move. She understood the message. This was not a test of survival anymore. It was a test of will. They were trying to force a reaction, any reaction, fear, aggression, something the system could understand. She gave them nothing. After a moment of silence, the drone directly in front of her fired again. This time the bolt was aimed at her head. GA didn't duck. She shifted her weight to her back foot, tilting her head just enough. The energy bolt missed her cheek by a centimeter and struck a thick coolant pipe on the wall behind her. There was a sharp hiss and a jet of white, freezing vapor shot out. The drone to her right was caught in the spray. Its hovering mechanism sputtered. It dipped suddenly, its blue eye flickering. It was not damaged, but it was disoriented. On the deck, Sumin's eyes widened. She used the drone's own attack. She used the environment. Daehyun began to see the pattern. She's not avoiding the fight. She's changing the battlefield. The drones recalculated. The three unaffected ones moved in closer, their weapon barrels glowing with a fresh charge. They were going to fire together from point-blank range. There would be no space to dodge. GA saw the buildup of energy in their cores. She had seconds. Her eyes fell on a loose section of the grated floor near her foot. It was a small panel, perhaps for maintenance. It was not meant to be a weapon. As the drones fired, GA dropped to one knee. She didn't try to get away from the blasts. Instead, she hooked her fingers under the loose grating and pulled it up, holding it in front of her like a crude metal shield. The energy bolts slammed into the grate. The metal glowed red-hot and vibrated violently in her hands, but it absorbed the blasts. The force of the impact pushed her back, scraping her knees on the floor. But she held on. The drones paused for a microsecond, their systems processing this unexpected defense. In that tiny moment of hesitation, GA acted. She didn't throw the shield. She was not strong enough to hurt them with it. Instead, she shoved the hot, charged grating directly into the path of the nearest drone. The drone, programmed to avoid solid obstacles, tried to hover back. But it moved too late. The glowing grate clanged against its metal body. There was a shower of sparks. The drone systems short-circuited. Its blue eye went dark, and it fell to the floor with a dull thud, inert. The data stream on the observation deck screen flashed red. Environmental weaponization confirmed. Target neutralization via external asset. Kalen stared. She used a piece of the floor. The remaining three drones reacted with increased aggression. They fanned out, trying to come at her from different angles in the narrow hall. One fired a continuous beam, forcing her to keep the hot grate raised. Another moved low, trying to get under her defense. GA was breathing heavily now. The grate was burning her hands, but she ignored the pain. She could not hold this position for long. She saw the drone firing the continuous beam. It was focused on her, its energy output constant. She glanced at a conduit on the wall next to it, which was sparking slightly from the earlier coolant leak. With a grunt of effort, she angled the hot grating. She didn't block the beam. She deflected it. The energy beam hit the grate and ricocheted sideways, striking the sparking conduit. The result was instantaneous. A massive arc of electricity jumped from the conduit to the drone. The drone lit up like a star for a second, its metal body glowing white-hot before it exploded into a dozen molten pieces. The force of the blast shook the corridor. Secondary chain reaction. Lethal force applied. Hostile unit destroyed. The system's calm voice was at odds with the violent scene. Now there were only two. The drones moved back, their programming in conflict. This small, unarmed thing was not just evading them. It was turning their own power, and the room itself, against them. They were not equipped for this. GA dropped the smoking grate. Her hands were red and blistered. She was tired. The two remaining drones saw her vulnerability. They advanced together for a final coordinated strike. She had no shield left. She had no room to run. She stood, waiting. As the first drone lunged, its weapon arm extended to grab her. She did not try to hit it. She placed her hand on its smooth, cool surface. As it moved forward, she moved with it, guiding its momentum, adding her own slight push to its direction. The drone, thrown off balance, veered sharply to the side and crashed directly into its partner. The two machines tangled together, their weapons firing wildly into the walls and ceiling. GA stepped back, pressing herself against the wall as sparks and debris rained down. When the chaos settled, the two drones were a tangled mess of broken parts struggling uselessly on the floor. The corridor flickered and faded. The humming pipes and grated floor dissolved. Once again, GA was standing in the pure white silent chamber. She was breathing hard, her body aching, her hands hurting. But she was still standing. She was still unharmed by a direct attack. On the observation deck, the silence was profound. The screen showed the data summary for Scenario 2. The metrics for strength and weapon power were still 0. But the metrics for tactical ingenuity, environmental manipulation, and threat neutralization were off the charts. Daehyun looked at GA, his fear now mixed with a dawning awe. "She's winning," he whispered. Kalen did not answer. He was looking at the aggression profile of the subject. It was a flat line. According to the system, the human had not committed a single aggressive act, yet it had neutralized 4 advanced combat units. "The system is not just confused," Kalen said, his voice low and troubled. "It is being contradicted. It is learning that a thing can be a pacifist and a predator at the same time." He looked from the screen to Daehyun and Sumin. This should not be possible. The white room offered no comfort. It was a blank page waiting for the next nightmare to be written upon it. GA stood in the center, her body tired. Her hands throbbed from the burns, and her muscles ached from the strain. She focused on her breathing, pulling the calm back around her like a blanket. The first 2 tests were over, but she knew they were just the beginning. The system was probing, learning, and what it was learning was making it desperate. On the observation deck, the mood had shifted completely. The initial tension had been replaced by a breathless anticipation. Daehyun was no longer a commander fearing for his subordinate's life. He was a spectator watching an artist at work. Sumin watched her data screens with fierce concentration, as if trying to decode the magic she was witnessing. Kalen was different. The polite bureaucratic mask was gone. His blue skin seemed paler. He stared at the main screen, his hands gripping the edge of the control panel. He had been the master of this ceremony for decades, and now he felt the floor shifting under his feet. "The system is escalating beyond standard parameters," he said, his voice hollow. "It has never encountered a zero-aggression, high-efficiency neutralization pattern before. It is attempting to force a measurable response." "What does that mean?" Taehyun asked, his eyes still on GA. "It means it will try to make her angry. Or afraid. It will try to break her spirit since it cannot break her body." As he spoke, the white room did not change into a new environment. Instead, the air itself seemed to thicken. A low, pervasive hum began, so deep it was felt more than heard. It was a sound that vibrated in the bones and grated on the nerves. Inside the chamber, GA felt it immediately. A pressure began to build inside her skull. It was not pain, not yet. It was a feeling of unease, a primal warning. The hum was designed to induce anxiety, to trigger the fight-or-flight response. She closed her eyes, trying to separate the sound from herself. She focused on the rhythm of her own heart, using it as a metronome against the chaotic vibration. Her biomonitor on the deck showed her heart rate spike for a moment, then slowly, deliberately, begin to lower again. "She's fighting it," Sumin said, amazed. "She's using biofeedback. She's consciously regulating her autonomic nervous system." The system registered the failure of the audio stressor. The hum changed, becoming a high-pitched whine that felt like needles in the ears. At the same time, the light in the room began to strobe violently, flashing between blinding white and pitch black. The effect was disorienting. It was hard to see, hard to think. The world became a jarring, painful series of snapshots. GA staggered, putting a hand to her head. In the flashing darkness, she saw things. Brief, terrifying images projected onto her retina. The face of a loved one, screaming. The crumbling of a familiar city. It was a psychological attack tailored from her own subconscious fears. On the deck, Daehyun saw the readouts. "It's hacking her brain." "Is that even allowed?" "The trial measures all aspects of combat readiness," Kalen replied stiffly. "Mental fortitude is primary." Inside the chamber, GA fell to her knees. The sensory assault was overwhelming. The noise, the light, the visions, it was a storm designed to shatter her mind. Her body wanted to panic. Her muscles tensed to run, to fight an enemy that wasn't there. But she did not scream. She did not lash out. Instead, on her knees in the strobing madness, she did the one thing the system could not compute. She began to meditate. She folded her hands in her lap, the burned palms facing upward. She closed her eyes against the flashing lights. She focused on the memory of a quiet garden on Earth, of the feel of sun on her skin, of the sound of real rain. She built a fortress in her mind, brick by brick, and retreated inside it. The biomonitor told the story. Her breathing slowed into a deep rhythmic pattern. Her heart rate settled into a calm, steady beat. Her brainwave patterns shifted from the chaotic spikes of stress to the organized waves of deep focus. The system was throwing everything it had at her mind, and her mind was not reacting. It was accepting and then letting go. The data stream on the observation deck was a mess of contradictions. Stress indicators, external maximum, physiological response minimal, psychological profile, unchanged. Paradox. Kalen watched the numbers, his confidence crumbling. This is not possible. The stress simulation breaks seasoned warriors. It makes them fire their weapons at shadows. It makes them rage. But she has no weapon to fire, Sumin said softly. And her rage is nowhere to be found. The system, frustrated, abruptly shut off the audio and visual assault. The room was once again silent and steadily lit. GA remained on her knees for a moment longer, then slowly, wearily, pushed herself to her feet. She looked tired, but her eyes were clear and calm. She had faced the monster in the dark and had not flinched. For a long moment, nothing happened. It was as if the system itself was thinking, processing this impossible outcome. Then, a new figure began to form in the white room. It did not emerge from a door. It simply coalesced from light and air, solidifying a few meters in front of GA. It was a human woman. She was dressed in the same simple gray jumpsuit. She had the same face, the same eyes, the same calm expression. It was a perfect holographic copy of GA, but this copy held a weapon. A long, sleek energy blade hummed in its hand, casting a sharp blue light across its features. The copy stood in a ready combat stance, its body poised to attack. The real GA looked at her double. There was no surprise on her face, only a deep, profound sadness. On the observation deck, Daehyun felt a chill. "What is this?" "The final test," Kalen whispered, his voice full of dread. "The mirror. It forces a subject to confront themselves, to prove their superiority by destroying their own reflection. It is the ultimate test of a warrior's will." The copy of GA moved. It was fast, a blur of motion. It swung the energy blade in a clean, precise arc aimed at the real GA's neck. The real GA did not have a weapon to block it. She had only herself. The battle test had begun its final, cruelest phase. The energy blade hummed as it cut through the air. The copy of GA moved with a perfect, fluid grace that was both familiar and terrifying. It was everything GA was, but twisted into a weapon. Its eyes, which should have held calm, held only a cold, focused intent. The real GA did not move to meet the attack. She stepped back, her own body mirroring the copy's movements but without the aggression. The blade missed her by inches. The heat from it warmed her face. On the observation deck, Daehyun leaned forward, his body tense. She can't just dodge forever. That thing is her equal in every way, but it has a sword. Sumin watched the data, her face pale. The system is calling it the self-conflict resolution test. It believes the only way to win is to destroy the opponent. The copy attacked again, a series of swift, precise strikes. High-low, a thrust to the chest. The real GA evaded each one, her movements economical and sure. It was like watching a shadow fight its owner. They moved in a silent, deadly dance across the white floor. The only sound was the hum of the energy blade and the soft scuff of their feet. But GA was tired. Her hands were burned. Her muscles were sore from the previous tests. The copy, a digital phantom, felt no fatigue. It was relentless. It feinted high and swept the blade low. GA jumped back, but not quite fast enough. The tip of the energy blade grazed her leg. It was not a deep cut, but it seared through her jumpsuit and skin with a sharp, painful sizzle. She gasped, stumbling for the first time. A small, dark burn mark appeared on her thigh. The copy pressed its advantage, its expression unchanging. It saw weakness and moved to exploit it. GA was forced to give ground, moving backwards in a tight circle. She was not just fighting a drone anymore. She was fighting a version of herself that wanted her dead. The psychological weight of it was immense. Every dodge, every block was a rejection of the violence she was being offered. The copy swung the blade in a wide, horizontal arc, aiming to cut her in half. GA dropped to the floor, the blade passing over her head. As she fell, she kicked out, not at the copy, but at its feet, trying to disrupt its balance. The copy anticipated the move and leaped over her leg, landing gracefully and immediately bringing the blade down in a stabbing motion. GA rolled to the side, the blade striking the floor where her chest had been. She was panting now, sweat stinging her eyes. She was losing. She could not win a physical fight against herself. She got to her feet, facing the copy. They stood still for a moment, staring at each other across the white space. The copy's blade was held ready. GA's hands were empty and open, and in that moment, GA made a decision. She stopped. She let her hands fall completely to her sides. She relaxed her shoulders. She stood straight, making no effort to defend herself. She looked directly into the eyes of her own double. The copy hesitated. Its programming was conflicted. The target was presenting no defense. It was a violation of all combat logic. It took a step forward, the blade humming, but it did not strike. "Stop," the real GA said. Her voice was quiet but clear in the vast chamber. It was the first word she had spoken since entering. The copy froze, its head tilting slightly. On the deck, Kalen stared. "She is addressing the simulation?" "This is a waste," GA continued, her voice calm but firm. She was not talking to a machine. She was talking to the intelligence behind it. She was talking to Kalen, to the galactic community. "You have seen our capacity. You have seen that we can turn your own strength against you. But our true value is not in fighting copies of ourselves." She took a slow, deliberate step towards the armed copy. It was a move of incredible courage. The blade was a hand's breadth from her chest. "Our value," she said, her eyes locked with her doubles, "is in offering what you do not have. You have warriors. You have destroyers. You have countless species who know how to break things. But do you have anyone who knows how to put things back together?" The copy did not move. The energy blade remained still. "You want to measure my strength?" GA asked. "This is my strength. The strength to see a pointless conflict and to choose not to participate. The strength to stand before a weapon and offer a conversation instead." She took another step. She was now within the copy's reach. One swift movement and it would be over. "Stand down," GA said. It was not a plea. It was a command. The copy of GA stood perfectly still. The system was processing. It was running through every algorithm, every line of code written for war and conquest. It was searching for a protocol for this situation. A subject who wins by refusing to fight, who conquers by surrendering, who proves their strength through vulnerability. It found nothing. The energy blade in the copy's hand flickered. The bright blue light wavered, then died. The weapon dissolved into shimmering motes of light that faded away. The copy itself began to blur at the edges. Its form became transparent like smoke. It looked at the real GA, and for a fleeting second its cold expression seemed to soften into something that might have been understanding. Then it dissolved completely, vanishing into the sterile air of the chamber. GA was alone again. The cut on her leg throbbed, a single testament to the violence that had almost been. She was breathing heavily, her body trembling with adrenaline and exhaustion, but she was standing. She had not thrown a punch. She had not fired a shot. She had won by refusing to play the final, most cruel game. In the observation deck, the silence was absolute. The main screen showed only GA, standing alone and unarmed in the white room. The battle was over. Then the alarms began to blare. A sharp, piercing sound filled the observation deck. Red lights flashed on the main control panel, throwing frantic shadows across the faces of Daehyun, Sumin, and Kalen. The calm, data-filled screens were now a chaos of error messages and warning symbols. On the main viewer, GA stood alone in the white chamber. She looked up as if she could hear the alarms through the walls. Her body was still, her face calm despite the turmoil she had caused. "What is happening?" Daehyun shouted over the noise. Kalen was frantically pressing buttons on his panel, but nothing responded. The system was not listening to him anymore. "The assessment is complete," he said, his voice strained. "But the result? The system cannot categorize the result. It is a paradox." The main screen, which had for decades coolly displayed classifications like Gamma Class or Delta Class, began to glitch. The letters flickered and scrambled, forming nonsense words before dissolving into static. It was like the machine was having a seizure, unable to process what it had just witnessed. Then, as suddenly as it started, the alarm stopped. The red lights vanished. A profound silence fell over the deck, heavier than before, The screen cleared. New text began to form line by line. The letters were not the bright, confident green of a standard classification. They were a stark, urgent red. Simulation terminated, threat analysis. Inconclusive subject, GUAE, Homo sapiens psychological. Profile, apex predator, pacifist paradox recommended. Classification, Earth. Unclassified threat. The words hung in the air. No one moved. No one spoke. Dae-hyun read the lines again, his mind struggling to understand. Classified threat? What does that mean? She didn't lose, she won. She beat every test. That is the problem, Commander, Kalen said softly. He was not looking at the humans anymore. He was staring at the screen with a look of deep, unsettling fear. She did not beat the test. She broke it. She presented it with a reality its programming cannot define. He turned slowly to face them. The polite superior assessor was gone. In his place was a frightened bureaucrat facing something he could not control. A Gamma-class species, we understand, he explained, his voice low. They fight. We give them an enemy, and they attack. A Delta-class species, we understand. They are clever in battle. We can use them. But this? He pointed a trembling finger at the screen. This is not a soldier. This is a force of nature. She defeated drones without violence. She neutralized a psychological attack with peace. She disarmed her own mirror by offering it compassion. He took a step back from them as if they were suddenly contagious. The system does not see a new ally. It sees a virus, a logic bomb. If your species' greatest weapon is a mind that can render our entire concept of war obsolete, then you are not a participant in our galactic order. You are its end, Sumin finally found her voice. But we come in peace. That's what she was showing you. You come in something far more dangerous than war, Kalen replied. You come in peace that cannot be defeated. How do you fight an enemy who wins by laying down their arms? How do you threaten a people whose strength is in their refusal to be threatened? The system is not calling you a threat because you are strong. It is calling you a threat because you are unknowable. You are a black hole in our database. A question with no answer. As he spoke, the heavy door to the testing chamber slid open with a quiet hiss. The bright white light from inside spilled onto the observation deck. GA stood in the doorway. She looked small and tired. The burn on her leg was visible through the torn fabric of her jumpsuit. Her hands were red and blistered. She leaned against the doorframe for a moment, catching her breath. Then she stepped through. Her eyes went first to her team. She saw the confusion on Dae-hyun's face and the shock on Soo-min's. She gave them a small, weary smile. It was a smile that said, "It is done." Then her gaze moved to the main screen. She read the words, "Earth, classified threat." She did not look surprised. She did not look angry. She simply nodded, as if she had expected this all along. Kalen watched her, his fear turning to a kind of horrified respect. "What are you?" he whispered. GA walked slowly into the center of the observation deck. She moved with a quiet dignity that filled the room. "We are humanity," she said, her voice hoarse but clear. "We have spent our entire history learning to be better killers. It is the easiest path, but a few of us have always searched for a harder path. The path of the protector, the negotiator, the peacemaker. You wanted to see our finest warrior." She gestured to the screen. "Now you have." Dae-hyun finally understood. They had not failed. They had succeeded in a way no one had imagined. They were not being welcomed into the galactic community. They were being quarantined. They were too dangerous to join. He looked from GA's calm, battered face to Kalen's terrified one. The future was uncertain and frightening. They would not be given a fleet. They would not be given a colony. They would be watched, feared, and contained. But as he looked at GA, he felt a strange pride. They had not bowed to the galaxy's rules. They had not shown them a stronger fist. They had shown them a stronger mind. They had shown them that for humanity, the ultimate battle was not against an enemy, but against the very idea of battle itself. The screen still glowed with its grim verdict, classified threat. It was not a rejection. It was a testament, a warning to the stars that a new kind of power had arrived, one that could not be fought with guns or ships, but only with wisdom, and for the first time, Dae-hyun was glad he was not the one who had gone into the chamber. He was a soldier. He would have fought. And he would have lost. GA, by refusing to fight, had won humanity a future more terrifying and more powerful than anyone could have dreamed. The battle test was over. The real challenge was just beginning.